The San Antonio Spurs are headed to the Western Conference Finals after San Antonio defeated the Houston Rockets Thursday evening in Houston in a blowout fashion that was very much unexpected. 114-75, as the Spurs were without their all-star Kawhi Leonard. Of course, without Tony Parker. The Rockets were without Nene. But the Spurs just came out aggressive against Houston. Played a different type of format, went more low post oriented into LaMarcus Aldridge and Pau Gasol, and then from there when the bench unit came in, they kind of moved the ball around like those 2014 Spurs, a lot of cutting, a lot of motion type sets. And once the Spurs got a hold a good solid lead on the Rockets' defense, they never let up, and the Spurs ended up leading by 42 points in that game where they blew out Houston. So I'm Paul Garcia of ProjectSpurs.com. Let's go ahead and break down this Game 6 between the Spurs and Rockets in this latest Project Spurs Vidcast. As mentioned, the Spurs' top three playmakers now, with Kawhi out, were LaMarcus Aldridge, Jonathan Simmons, and Patty Mills. LaMarcus went off with 34 points on 26 shots, scorching. He got an early rhythm, just over-the-shoulder shots from the post, driving into guys, getting to the foul line, just getting the ball even from about 15 to 17 feet out and just shooting face-up jumpers over them. And that's something different that you see from LaMarcus with Kawhi out, is that now he knows he's the go-to guy. This is the night that the Spurs really relied on him. They needed that Portland type of LaMarcus Aldridge, that version of himself. And even one of his former teammates, CJ McCollum, tweeted during the game, that's the LA I knew. I think he tweeted something like that. So even the Portland guy knew that this is the Aldridge that they used to see nightly, and this is a guy who really wasn't showing up to San Antonio. It's hard for him to get into a rhythm when Kawhi's the main guy. He's their go-to option. But on this night without Kawhi, LaMarcus ended up being that dominant force. He again continued to dominate the rebounding battle with 12 rebounds. He played 36 minutes. In this game, Aldridge posted a usage percentage of 35.4%. During the season, he's about mid-20s, somewhere around there, and so that's probably the biggest difference for him without Kawhi, is that he knows, hey, I'm getting my touches in the post. I'm gonna get some of those pick and pop looks. I can get the ball and just shoot. When he has that kind of freedom, where he knows he's gonna get a lot of a large amount of shots, and they're gonna continue to come whether he misses or makes them. I think that's a different mindset compared to when Kawhi's on the floor. What they do got to find, though, is once Kawhi's back in this next series against the Golden State Warriors, they need to find that balance of can LaMarcus be that number two option to Kawhi, or should they run more of their sets through LaMarcus in the post first, inside out, rather than having Kawhi run more pick and roll or try to get him post ups and stuff like that, and kind of just kicking to Aldridge when he's open or he needs an extra shot. So that's kind of the balance Coach Pop and the Spurs' offense needs to find, is how do they get LaMarcus continuing to play at this level with Kawhi Leonard by his side, because against the Warriors he should still have some of those types of matchups with, even though Draymond Green's one of the better defenders in the league, he's still undersized compared to LaMarcus. He's going to go against Zaza Pachulia, JaVale McGee, and David West. And so the Spurs do got to try to get him involved and get him playing like this against the Warriors if they want to have a chance in the series. In the series against the Rockets, Aldridge finishes with 18.8 points per game. He shoots 49% from the field. He grabbed 8.7 rebounds in 33 minutes a game. Jonathan Simmons, even without Kawhi, he continued to be one of the Spurs' key playmakers, especially off the dribble. He finishes with 18 points on 12 shots, an efficient night for him as well, shooting the ball. He actually got some of his jumpers to go in, whereas in Game 5, he couldn't make any of his open outside shots or his mid-range jumpers. This time, he was making some of those mid-range jumpers. He had a quick, early confidence, that shooting rhythm. He made an outside three as well. He dished 4 assists to his teammates, and he played 31 minutes. In this game, Simmons again was the Spurs' second leading playmaker. He got 20.7% of he had a usage percentage of 20.7% of their possessions. For the series, when you take out Tony Parker, because he's obviously out now until next season, Simmons ended up being the Spurs' third leading scorer with 13.2 points per game, shooting 47% from the floor in 24 minutes. They're gonna need Simmons again for against the Warriors. He's a really good defender. He can switch positions almost 1 through 4, especially against small ball type lineups. He's one of the guys who can get into the rim, create for others, get to the free line. And they're gonna need Kawhi's gonna need help. LaMarcus is gonna need help with Simmons. So hopefully for the Spurs, this performance against the Rockets got some confidence in him and really made him a real key component for their playoff rotation going forward against the Warriors. And then lastly, Patty Mills had a good steady game for the Spurs, finishes with 14 points on 10 shots. Coach Pop mentioned how he kind of ran the offense pretty well, kind of kept everything calm. So he finishes at 7 assists and he plays 27 minutes. And just like LaMarcus and Simmons, Patty's going to be key again for the Spurs since no more Tony. to have him going forward. Looking at the Spurs' offense, this was a night where they really, Manu Ginobili mentioned after the game that without Kawhi, they had to change their attack. And so, of course, they wanted to go more to the low post with Marcus and Pau Gasol. But Manu said that they want to just move the ball, have guys moving, and really break apart that defense. And you could just see it. This is something where when you run a very pass-heavy motion set, guys rolling and screening for each other, this kind of offense really opens up the lane for the Spurs and got them some really good looks. So San Antonio ends up shooting 53% from the floor. They didn't have a great night shooting the ball, but they didn't really have to take a lot of threes when they were just getting to the rim. So they shoot 5 of 22 from three, 23%. They didn't get to the free throw line a whole lot with 7 of 13 free throws, shooting 54% from the charity stripe. Passing, the Spurs had their best passing game of the playoffs. They ended up tallying 32 assists on 51 made field goals. So they assisted on 63% of their makes. In the regular season, the Spurs were 13-0 when they tallied over 30 assists in a game. And they had yet to do it in the playoffs, but now in this game, they got to that magical number with 32 assists against the Rockets' 18th ranked defense in the regular season. The Spurs, despite missing Kawhi, their number one primary ball handler, the Spurs actually still were able to take care of the ball. They executed very well. They were calm, patient on offense, as I'll talk about in the pace of the game. And they only committed 8 turnovers, and they got back on defense. You saw Danny Green with some hustle plays, Simmons, Patty Mills. They got back, and they only got four Houston points off turnovers. And then lastly, the bench came through for San Antonio, outscoring the Rockets 28-17. Coach D'Antoni did play Sam Dekker some more minutes rather than not playing him at all and sticking with 7 guys in that last game. But once the Spurs went up by 18 early in the second quarter, the game was pretty much over, and the Rockets really couldn't do much. And so in the end, a lot more guys got to play, but that's because the game had already been decided. Some guys, though, that did step up off the bench for the Spurs were DeJounte Murray. He almost posted a triple-double in 24 minutes. He finishes with 11 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. Just had that floater going, played really good positional defense. He had a really crazy, awesome alley dunk from Kyle Anderson. So DeJounte was key for the Spurs off the bench. Especially, he also helped Patty not have to play a lot of minutes and not have to rely so much on the offensive end because Murray could spell him for those minutes. They're going to need Murray. Maybe this game again gave him some confidence as well, just like it did possibly for Simmons. Though he's not a starter, I did want to mention also Danny Green finishes with 10 points, 2 assists. He could continue to attack James Harden off the drive if Harden closed out too late or if Harden wasn't in position to stop him from driving. Now, Danny might enjoy that this series, but against the Warriors, that might be a little bit tougher when he has guys like Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Sean Livingston, Kevin Durant, Andre Iguodala out on the wing. That's going to be something that's a little bit more different for Danny, but who knows? Maybe his confidence rose in getting those looks and those layups against James Harden. Pau Gasol was also key for the Spurs. Puts up 10 points, grabs 11 rebounds, and he also protected the paint well with 3 blocks. And it shows that in this battle of small versus big between the Spurs and Rockets, the big advantage ended up winning. Even though Pop did play some small ball in a few of those games when Kawhi was healthy, the fact that he started Pau and went back to that what everybody would deem as a slower lineup, it ended up working out well for the Spurs, especially when they controlled the pace and they really targeted hard in the low post. Looking at the Spurs' 6-minute increments chart, the Spurs, even without Kawhi, they played excellent defense. They held the Rockets to 8 points at the start of the second quarter. And as I mentioned, when Harden was getting his rest break, that's pretty much when the game broke open. The Spurs' bench came in and they drove the lead up to 18. And from that point on, the Rockets could never make a comeback. And then when the Rockets did need some points, especially their last rally was that fourth quarter, the Spurs held them to just 11 points in the quarter, just 11. So the Spurs really relied on their backbone, which is defense. That's why they were the number 1 defensive team in the league this season. And in their final elimination game, to get rid of an opponent, they relied on that. And Houston, obviously, if you look at the Spurs' data, they just couldn't get the stops because that's not their forte. They're just not a great defensive team. They rely so much on offense, and when they needed stops to try to stop that Spurs lead from continuing to snowball, they couldn't rely on their defense for that. Spurs' defense against the Rockets. So Houston had one of their worst games. This can be attributed to, one, yes, the Spurs' defense. They were all hustling. They were doing really good closeouts, rotations, making sure to communicate. But then also, you have to wonder now that it's been 6 games and the way that the Rockets play so fast, especially those initial games, and the types of small ball lineups that they use, did their style of play eventually tax their bodies? Did they get a little tired? Did their shots just not go in as well? And is that something to look at for the future for this team? Is can they play that style in the playoffs? Because obviously it shows they can't, because they lost in just 6 games, and that was without the Spurs' 2 best players, and Tony Parker and Kawhi Leonard for the last few games of that series. The Rockets shot 29% from the floor, 13 of 40 from 3, 33%. So they got 43s up. They only made 13 of them. Again, are their legs tired? Spurs did close out very well, and eventually, the 3 ball, you live by it and you might die by it. And it's a rewarding shot, but it's also a very low risk. It's a low percentage shot. There's a reason why league average is usually about close to like 36-40% just in the league from shooting from 3. The Rockets got 18 out of 25 free throws. A lot of that was Clint Capella. The Spurs kind of relied on him to try to beat them, and obviously that wasn't the plan when you want Clint Capella trying to keep you in a ball game. It didn't work out. The Spurs out-rebounded the Rockets 60-37. The Rockets only got 10 offensive rebounds. Again, this was something that was very key for the Spurs. Their rebounding advantage with LaMarcus Aldridge, with Pau Gasol, David Lee, a lot of those guys, even Kawhi before he got hurt, and some of the other guards, and like Simmons, they actually helped on the boards as well. This is something the Spurs could still have an advantage of in the series against the Warriors, is that they can still try to out-rebound them, keep possessions alive, keep the Warriors from getting extra possessions like they did from the Rockets. That would be a very big, significant role for the Spurs as they head into that next series. Is can they control the boards and really pound Golden State on the glass with their traditional biggest lineups. The Spurs' defense was excellent in transition. The Rockets only got 6 transition points. The pace was in the Spurs' favor. The pace was played at 93.86 possessions per 48 minutes. Again, on offense, the Spurs took their time. It takes a while to run that 4-down type of offense, get LaMarcus in the post or pound the post. Observe the defense. Is somebody going to try to double, move the ball around, do some driving kick action, do some plays off screens? And all that is just the clock ticking for Houston. They don't want to play defense. They're getting tired. And on the other end, the Rockets go down and try to take a quick shot. And by the time you know it, the game's just, San Antonio is just compounding that lead against Houston. So the pace worked for the Spurs. They're going to need, again, to control the pace in the next series against the Warriors. The Warriors can play different ways, though. They can play in the half court. They can also play in the run and gun style like Houston. So the Spurs have to be ready to try to keep the pace at their level that they're comfortable with. And though the Rockets usually have more playmakers, I just kind of highlighted James Harden. He finishes with 10 points on 11 shots. He had 6 turnovers and 7 assists. By halftime, everyone was talking about how he had only taken 2 shots. And one thing that was noted on Twitter by my buddy Michael Erler of PoundingTheRock.com was he mentioned how maybe there is something to Harden having to, when the Rockets played small these last 2 games, of Harden having to guard big guys. That being a 6'5" guard, guarding a 6'11" and 7-foot big man with all that weight, that gets tough. That might tax your body. Maybe Harden was tired. We don't know. Was he hurt from the previous series when he had rolled his ankle against the Thunder? They were saying that maybe he had a concussion that nobody knew about. I mean, there was just all these different ways. Maybe he's not 100% healthy, but I think also that has to be taken into account. Were his legs just tired? It's hard for when you're the primary option on offense and you're the guy that the Rockets need to get to the rim to create for others. That becomes taxing, especially on the defensive end when the defense is purposely targeting you. Manu Ginobili goes at James Harden. Danny Green goes at James Harden on the drive. Jonathan Simmons does the same thing. Then in the post, LaMarcus Aldridge and Pau Gasol are trying to target him as well. So that does have to be something that Houston has to monitor for their future, is how can they make Harden's job on defense as easy as possible, though he doesn't obviously pay a lot of attention to that end of the floor most times. He got help from Trevor Ariza with 20 points and Clint Capella with 15 points. But if you're the Spurs, that you take that. You want those are not their primary scorers. You want those guys to be the supporting cast for Harden, and not guys like Eric Gordon, who only had 6 points, Patrick Beverley 7 points, and Lou Williams 8 points. Even Ryan Anderson had a scoreless game with no points in that game. So now it's on to the best of the West between the San Antonio Spurs and Golden State Warriors. The Spurs won the regular season series 2-1, but that can't really be taken with a lot of, I guess, like a detail, because in their first meeting was when the opening night of the season. That's when John Simmons had like a season high 20 points, and then he really didn't do that again in the regular season. That was Kevin Durant's first game as a Warrior. It was Pau Gasol's first game as a Spur. So that game was, it might show a little bit of stuff, what to expect in the next series, but not a lot. Maybe like 20% of what you could expect. Then in the second game, that's the one where I believe it was Steve Kerr rested all his guys, or Pop, or somebody rested all their guys, and then so like you can't really get a lot out of that game as well. In the third game, the Warriors and Spurs played almost full healthy lineups, but Kevin Durant was still out. And in that game, the Spurs went up by, I think it was like 22 points or something like that. And then the Warriors came back and beat them in San Antonio. So the game film won't reveal a true matchup. And it's also interesting that what Spurs team now shows up against the Warriors, because they had very different variations. They had the Spurs team with Tony Parker, which obviously that team's not here anymore because he's out for the entire playoffs. They had the team with Kawhi Leonard as their primary option. Kawhi was out in game 6 against the Rockets, and we don't know the status yet if he's going to play in game 1. I obviously think he would, because he would have gotten 4 days off now from Wednesday all the way to Saturday to try to heal that ankle. So I think that Kawhi will probably play, but is he going to be at 100%? So you have the Kawhi Leonard type of offense where they run it to the post, through the isolation, through the pick and roll. Or now the new thing you saw was, do they run the post-up type of offense through LaMarcus Aldridge and Pau Gasol, try to find the smallest guy on the floor and target that mismatch off the bench, try to move the ball a little bit more like you saw against the Rockets. So those are they're something the Warriors are going to have to be ready to look for, is what Spurs offense is going to attack them. And then of course on the defensive end, the Spurs have gotten a lot of practice as far as running a spaced out shooting team in the Rockets that really prepared them, I think, a little bit better for Golden State. Though Golden State has a lot more options who will take the non-paint 2. They will drive the basket. They will also shoot the 3. So they have so many more options. It'll be an interesting series. This weekend I'll be going through all the film and all the data and just trying to figure out where the mismatches happen, what to expect in the series. So that I'll put my series preview up on projectspurs.com. So game 1 tips off May 14th in Oracle Arena at 2:30 p.m. on ABC Central Standard Time. So for Project Spurs, I am Paul Garcia.